Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome to Mullin It Over here on Heart of Ohio Sports. Nate Mullins live inside Studio Squared. I've got Greg Kinn on the ones and twos, and we've got a couple special guests joining us via Zoom. First up, I got to tell you folks, make sure you share the video. Like, follow, subscribe on all of our platforms, especially hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Find Heart of Ohio Sports on YouTube. Hit subscribe. Help us out. Share the video. Let's introduce our guests today. First, obviously, we all know Zach Baker, sports editor at the Findlay Courier. He's been on a couple times with us already. Thanks for coming on with us tonight, Zach.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
And then tonight, special guest, the writer of Weird Moments in Cleveland Sports History, Vince Guerrieri. Thanks for coming on with us, Vince.
My pleasure.
Absolutely. So we have a couple of guests lined up for later. Well, actually, just one now, but we'll get to that later. Let's talk about this book. Vince, Zach, I had you on because you're friends with Vince. So explain how you guys know each other first, so that way people understand why we have the two of you on at the same time.
Oh, gosh. Well, Vince and I are both graduates of Bowling Green State University, about 5 years apart. And right after college, we started doing this thing called 210 West. And it was like this web thing. And Vince ended up editing a lot of my stuff and a lot of my columns that I was writing at the time. And when I was in my mid 20s and mid to late 20s. And then Vince got a job as sports editor at the Fremont News Messenger. So we saw each other a lot and
Nice.
became pretty good friends. And
I got there only a little after you got to Tiffin, right?
right, about a year. And we got to spend, so, just by being at the same events, a lot like you and I, Nate, you go to the same events, you see each other, and we just became, we hit it off, and two BGSU Falcons and two writers. And it has been a lot of fun. It's been a heck of a ride. Got to do a lot of cool things with Vince over the years. Went to a movie premiere with them. Got to do some other stuff and go to
Just
a bunch.
spring.
Huh?
Just this spring was when we went to
Just
the
this
movie
spring, we
premiere.
went to a movie premiere. And the biggest thing is one of the bigger things is I've been able to get an early look at some of his books, and one of the books that I got an early look at was this one. So it's
That's what I hear,
so I got a
folks.
chance to look at it before everybody else did. So I was one of the lucky ones.
Well, you lucky duck, you. Insider Zach Baker. You got a new label now.
Yeah.
So Vince, I got to talk to you. Let's talk a little bit about this book. What inspired you to write this one here?
This was basically my pandemic project. Early 2020, the outline was basically crowdsourced on Twitter.
Right.
And it was, everybody was talking about all of the goofy things that have happened in Cleveland sports history. And there really seems to be an inordinate amount of them.
It's a book that writes itself.
Right. And it is the longest book I've ever written.
That's
And
great.
then, the pandemic came along, and all of a sudden, fortunately, my wife and I were both able to keep working, so we didn't have a whole lot of adverse effects, but there was no sports to watch, and I found myself with some free time, and I'm going, I can probably do this. And I found a willing audience at Gray Publishing, and they do a lot of Cleveland and Northern Ohio type nonfiction publications, a lot related to sports. My coworker at the Chronicle Telegram, Jim Ingram, wrote a biography of Mike Hargrove for Gray. A lot of the books that Terry Pluto has written lately have been for Gray. Dan Coughlin's books have been published through Gray. So, they thought it was as interesting as I did, and I turned in a manuscript earlier this year, and the book hit the streets in November, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, I happened to see Zach's share of the book, and I was like, oh, well, this is right up my alley. I love Cleveland sports, anything Cleveland sports. Zach and I, anytime it's off air or even on air, we've gone back and forth with Cleveland sports history over the years. And that's one of those things. I saw the book and I'm like, oh, this is definitely something I need to talk to the writer about. And especially with Zach having the insider track, I wanted to get you on, talk with you a little bit about this. So what other books have you written other than this one?
Well, my first book was a straight up contract gig. It was a sports trivia book. And in 2013, I wrote a book for the History Press on the Fremont Ross Sandusky High School football rivalry.
Nice.
I believe both of those are available on Amazon as well as this most recent one.
Yes, like I said, this book is put out through Gray Publishing. You can order it through their website. There are assorted brick and mortar locations that are selling it in Northeast Ohio, but it's available on all the usual suspects online: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, wherever you like to go shopping for stuff like that.
Very nice. So what all goes into this publishing process? Now, once you've actually finished your job, you've written the book, then what? What happens next?
Well, I mean, even before you've written the book, if you're going to write a novel, they expect to see a completed manuscript. If you're going to write a nonfiction book, you can usually sell it based on an outline and a sample chapter or two.
Okay.
And that's how this got the ball rolling. And like I said, I was able to get it going on
Oh, there goes Zach.
We appear to have lost somebody. But anyway, I was able to submit the manuscript in March, and I made sure that Zach had looked at it before, so I didn't look like a complete doofus. But from there, there's a line edit, there's a copy edit. You got to think about all the graphic elements, the cover. We were looking at some kind of photos or illustrations, and that didn't come to pass. But the book came out in November, and then we started doing marketing for the book, which is, appearances at bookstores, appearances on radio programs and podcasts like this, and just kind of pounding the pavement to encourage people to read the book or at least buy the book.
Okay. So now when you get into the writing process, I think we got Zach back here. We'll try to see if we can connect him back.
Looks like it.
Thought you said that the hotel had good Wi-Fi, Zach. No, just joking.
I'm the problem. No, the hotel's fine. I think I might be the problem here.
So now describe your writing process. When you decide what you want to write about, what's your writing process look like?
Well, I mean, it depends on what it is that I'm writing. I spent a lot of years in newspapers, and a lot of stuff that you write very quickly on deadline. You kind of adhere to the inverted pyramid style of writing, the most important stuff at the top, and then down into the details. But I really started branching out into magazine writing about almost 10 years ago. And the thing with magazine writing is, and again, there's a pitching process not unlike pitching a book. You say, this is a story idea, and one of the things they tell you is you're pitching a story, you're not pitching a topic. You say, I want to write this. This is where we're going to start. This is where we're going to go. This is where we're going to end.
I like it.
And, that's kind of what happened with this book. I'm going, this is all the stuff that I'm going to include. This is how you, divide up the chapters. Because this is one of those stories. This book does not really have what I'd call a chronological narrative. All the chapters are grouped, not even by team either, but they're grouped by, common themes. There's strange injuries. There's, strange things that happen on the field. There's, strange things that happen with team owners, strange things that happen with, team front offices. And my personal favorite, the last chapter, is called Wait, That Guy Was Here. And it's about all of these people who were famous somewhere else, and for one reason or another, ended up in Cleveland, either before they became famous somewhere else or well after they had become famous somewhere.
I kept waiting for Mark Langston to show up in that chapter.
Oh, okay. Well, I got to leave something for the sequel.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, you write out the outline and you just fill it in, because it's very easy for something like this. If you were going to say, I wrote 60,000 words for this book, that can sound really intimidating. Right. But if you say, I wrote 1,000 words a week for 60 weeks. That sounds a little more manageable, especially if, you have a background as a writer. 1,000 words. I mean, that it takes Zach that long just to clear his throat.
First of all, I object to the mere premise of that argument. I think if you recall, I tend to be, I'm a very concise writer. Believe me, if I wanted to, my Browns columns could go 2,000 words, but I always cut them off at about 400 to 600. But
Browns columns could go 2,000 words because you're a masochist.
Well, you only take on certain roles because you have that in your background.
That's great.
No, I think the thing of it is, though, the thing of it is like, yeah, it is very daunting, but the best way to do anything like that is to do it, even like for me with the big columns is kind of the same thing, the big stories, but it's like you can't think about it either. You just got to put your head down and go.
Right.
Because it's for Vince, I remember when you wrote the Politico column, one of them anyway, way back when Cleveland got the convention. And that was like a really, but you just have to, and you do a lot. I mean, you do a lot of the contract stuff, and but it's one of those things where, yeah, it's daunting, but it's the first step that I think is the most important one. And then when you take that one, you're just a little bit closer. It makes it a little bit less daunting.
Mm-hmm.
So
what was the old joke? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
That's right. Absolutely. So now, what were some of the moments that might have stuck out to you as a Cleveland sports fan over the years? Some of the moments that you kind of, when you were writing this book, it was like, all right, I have to include these.
I mean, obviously, anybody that's been around for the Browns for the last 10 years, they said Johnny Manziel's going to get his own chapter, isn't he? And I mean, he kind of did, but not all at once. I mean, that was just one of those things. The exact words I had the night they drafted him is, "This makes the Browns more interesting. It does not make them better." And
yes, it sells more tickets.
I really wanted not to be right about that, but I was right about it. But there are actually a couple of stories that I had written for various publications that found their way into the book. When fall of 2015, I wrote a piece for Ohio Magazine on the first year of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And I was able to do a lot of great interviews. And I don't know how much you know about that team, but they were terrible. I mean, absolutely terrible. And everybody was just thrilled to talk to me because, I mean, everybody remembers the miracle at Richfield. Nobody remembers that first year when they were that bad.
Yeah.
And a couple of those stories ended up finding their way into the book. I did a piece for Deadspin about the Stratomatic All-Star Game. In 1981, Cleveland got Major League Baseball All-Star Game. 1981, there was also a strike. And everybody was legitimately worried about whether or not the strike was in the middle of the season. So everybody was legitimately worried about whether or not the All-Star Game would be played at Cleveland that year, and it ended up being played. They settled the strike in August, and the first game back was the All-Star Game. But on the day in July that it was supposed to be, a couple of producers from Channel 3, the NBC affiliate here in Cleveland, got into Cleveland Stadium, set up some card tables, and had a Stratomatic All-Star Game of their own. And they put on all the trappings of what you might expect from an Indians game at that point. Rocco Scotti sang the national anthem. The baseball bug, the Indians' short-lived mascot, was there entertaining a crowd estimated at 50 people.
It was a bug.
It was just, and one of the things about the All-Star Game is the reason it's so popular is because for many, many years, that was the only thing that was happening in pro sports that week.
It still is for the most part.
Yeah.
That's the worst week of the year.
All-Star Game. What?
That's the worst week of the year for me to fill space.
Right.
Because there's nothing going on.
And that's, because of that, everybody that would have been covering the All-Star Game says, hey, look at this Stratomatic All-Star Game. And it kind of, it registered on the media landscape.
Vince, can you tell Nate the story about when you called that producer and what he said to you when you called him after all these years?
I believe his exact words were, "How the hell did you find me?" Which is just like catnip for journalism. That's
oh my God,
for journalists. That's right up there with, "How did you get this number?"
Oh, yeah. I love it.
Well, if I may add one other thing about the actual All-Star game that I always found interesting. If you go back, because the 1981 All-Star game is in fact on YouTube, you can watch the entire thing, and there's a lot of funny things in it. With the benefit of hindsight, Dave Garcia gets a gigantic standing ovation from the 80,000 because he's a coach at the All-Star game for the American League, and the next guy is Don Zimmer, and he gets booed, and he takes it like he just lifts his hat. He thinks it's hilarious. But the funniest thing for me that happens in that game is Pete Rose leads off for the National League. And Tony Kubek and Joe Garagiola are doing the game, and they were talking about how baseball was on trial, and they said, this is 1980, and they said 1981, excuse me, and they said, well, if baseball is on trial, could we have a better character witness than Pete Rose to lead off the game?
Oh my God!
Times they change.
That's like OJ rescuing the cat in the Towering Inferno. OJ also comes up in the book because his bust at the Hall of Fame in Canton, somebody just at that point, and this was right when he wasn't on trial at that point, but he was about to go on trial, and somebody just picked up his bust because they weren't bolted down or anything, because who'd steal the bust? And they stole the bust.
Didn't they find it on the side of a highway or something?
An ODOT crew found it on the side of 77, almost to downtown Cleveland.
I think it was Jay Leno who said, the sad thing about all this is that the guy who stole it will probably go to jail and OJ will walk.
Right.
I don't think nobody ever got charged with that. So, I mean, if OJ's out there looking for the real killers, he should be looking for this guy too.
It's amazing how all those real killers end up at golf courses. But anyway, yeah. But I think, if I may just interject, I thought one of the more interesting things too, wasn't there, because you guys are wrestling fans over there at Heart of Ohio Sports.
Oh yeah, a little bit.
Vince, can you tell them about the story, and if they haven't read it already, about Austin Carr and WWE Raw?
Yes, that was in the same chapter as the OJ thing, because they had WWE Raw at the arena, and I think it was the next day there was a Cavs game, or like the day after that. And God love him, Tom Withers from the Associated Press looks up and says, "Austin Carr's banner is gone."
You remember this, Greg?
Oh my God. And he asked AC about it, and I guess AC joked with him and says, "Yeah, I'm coming out of retirement, so they took the banner down." But somebody had caught the banner, and they never figured out who did that either. So they just put a replacement banner up there. So somewhere in Cleveland, I really hope this is the case, somebody's got Austin Carr's retired number in their basement,
along with a Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestling figure and Ultimate Warrior and all that.
I like to think somebody's got that, and I like to think somebody's got the 48 pennant, because that was another story in the book. When the Indians were mathematically eliminated in 1949, Bill Veeck had a funeral for the pennant. He brought this horse-drawn hearse out. They lowered the pennant. They put it in a casket in the hearse. They buried it out in the outfield, and they said a few words over it, and that was the end of it. And I guess Bill Veeck went all out. I mean, he was wearing the top hat and the frock coat and all that stuff. And I just randomly stumbled on it doing some research for something else. But there was a weekend in 75, I think, that they had the 48 team back, and they talked about the pennant being buried, and one of the grounds crew, who was around in 48, said, "Yeah, we dug it up the next day because Bill Veeck borrowed the casket from a funeral home and they wanted it back." But they never found a pennant.
Well, and that might have been where Pete Franklin got the idea to run the funerals every year on his radio show for the Indians. I think it was Dwayne Kuiper who said that they always knew when they were doing it because they would get sympathy cards every year saying condolences for another lost season.
I think I might have
But I will say,
guest
one thing
here.
I want to say about this book, Nate, just
Hang
real
on.
quick, is like,
Just
that
1 second. I'll be
I'm
right
pretty
back,
intense
guys.
about Cleveland sports,
You don't say.
and there's stuff I didn't know. So I think that's a pretty good deal. There's stuff that I couldn't quite figure out. So
Did we lose him?
No, he's our other guest is arriving here, so he just wanted to
Oh,
go. To the
okay.
door.
Yeah, I just had to open the
I
door.
thought
and
I
make
offended
sure.
him so much he walked out.
No,
I
no,
was
no,
worried.
no. I had to accommodate our next guest. He just arrived in studio, so just want to make sure I set him up, make sure he's ready to go. But yeah, there was a lot of things when I went through this book that kind of stood out to me. Now, since you finished the book, have there been any moments that maybe fans have pointed out to you that you might have omitted, other than the one that Zach told you about, just a minute ago?
I don't know that there have been, moments that were omitted, but I mean, there have definitely been moments that have happened since then. And I
That's
was
a
able to
never-ending
sneak
book.
in right under the wire.
yeah, wait a week. I'm sure there'd be
Right.
wait a week, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you put it out, just wait a week.
I was able to sneak in just under the wire, Zach Plesac punching the mound and breaking his hand.
Ugh.
Didn't he get hurt aggressively taking off his shirt? I
That
believe.
was,
too?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
broke his
like
hand.
tore ligaments in his
Like, I don't know
thumb or
about you guys, but when I hear aggressively taking off a shirt, I always think of Hulk Hogan.
Same.
Tearing
Yes,
his shirt off.
yes.
I mean, like, I think they should just put Real American when Zach Plesac pitches, play that and have him come out in like one of those yellow shirts that he, on a bandana, and just do that. But yeah, that one, and of course, I mean, some of the way the Browns have lost this year, I think could probably find its way into the book.
Yeah. Well,
I was at that Jets game. They said that Browns were the first team to blow a 2-score lead in less than 2 minutes since the Browns did it in 2001 in Chicago. And I was at that game at Soldier Field. And it was just kind of amazing. I don't know if you guys had ever been to old Soldier Field, but it definitely looked like a stadium that dated back to the 20s. And that was really the main attraction for us to go to this game. And, the Browns go up 14 and you see people, just streaming out of the seating bowl. And then the Bears score and you see, that stream turn into a trickle. And then the Bears score again to tie the game. And people start coming back so they can sit back down and see what happens.
The one thing with that game was, like, there were so many things. They had to score a touchdown, recover an onside kick, and then complete a desperation pass with no time left in regulation.
yeah.
Those three things, like, that was the thing. The thing about the Jets game was how easy it all was, because the Browns mishandled the onside kick so poorly, because of the fact that they blew the coverages so badly. What the Jets did this year, that was easy compared to what happened in Chicago. When I remember where I was a junior in college. I was watching it at downtown in BG. And as soon as Mike Brown had the interception and ran it back for a touchdown, I stormed out. I just remember kicking the door as I went by. I was so angry. And,
luckily that night we could watch the Yankees lose, so that took a little of the pain.
It did, yeah. But that was Game 7 of the 01 World Series that night.
Right.
Yeah. So, all right, Zach, I got to ask you, and then I'll go to Vince next, and then we'll kind of run through. What's your top 5 weirdest moments in Cleveland sports?
Top 5.
Top 5.
Well, I think there's a story, the Dennis Eckersley thing.
Okay.
Dennis Eckersley, Rick Manning, that story has to be on there. That's one of those things. That's one of those that I just can't quite. The one from 2001, Vince, where the 3 Browns were arrested. You remember that one?
Yes, within the span of like 4 days. And it was,
Right.
The part that killed me was one of them was Gerard Warren got popped for a weapons charge, and it was at a party thrown by Plaxico Burress, who himself is known for being careless with firearms.
Well, I think the line that I remember from that was Carmen Policy saying in a press conference that the officer who arrested Gerard Warren said he was the nicest guy he'd ever arrested.
Oh, well, isn't that nice? Isn't that nice?
Carmen's always been a glass half full kind of guy, because he was the one who said after Bottlegate, I think it just proves how passionate our fans are.
Oh,
Well, they don't
That's
have-
one of the
yeah.
items that I didn't complete is the guy who was throwing water bottles at Jimmy Haslam at the Browns game.
You'll
the
never.
bottles.
Yeah,
The
passionate
bottles don't
fan
pack.
base.
The bottles don't pack as much of a wallop.
Yeah, passionate
Or the
fan
guy
base
who
is a
gave
great
the
way to
stadium a
describe
lawn
Browns
job.
fans. What was that, Vince?
That's another one that happened after the book came out. The guy who gave the stadium a lawn job.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Man,
I think you know, and again, he's already said it, but I think that the pennant from 1948, which would be one of the
Yeah.
great things that Cleveland could have for a championship, that's not there, that we don't have that. I think that's a pretty incredible, story. I mean, some of the stuff, I think most of the stuff for me is the stuff that I didn't live through.
yeah.
I think that
I'm just thinking like in my lifetime, you know, like when I go through the top 5 for me, it's the ones that I've lived through. You know, I don't think about the old ones because I wasn't there to experience those. I think about my top 5 would be the ones that I got to live through and go, what the, are you kidding me? This is just only in Cleveland moment, you know, like for me, it was, you know, Dwayne Rudd ripping off his helmet. That was one of them that always has stood out to me. Cost him a win against the Chiefs. I mean,
That was one of 3 games
yeah,
that the Browns ended up losing since they've come back on an untimed down at the end of regulation.
you know,
yep.
so it says 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and they're ahead. The clock says, so if you looked at the clock, I know one of those games was in Detroit. That was the Brady Quinn, Matthew Stafford game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I remember Abe Elam just shoving the receiver out of the way on the interference play.
No, it wasn't Abe Elam. It was Hank Poteet.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And it's like you don't usually call an interference on a Hail Mary type situation, but in this case, Hank Poteet it was the most obvious push you've ever seen.
Yeah.
It was so like you couldn't not call it. You know, it's like that was how over the top it was. I think, you know, you talk about with the funny thing about Cleveland is you could do a story about this where it would be about just one of the franchises. I also think that the other thing for me was George Steinbrenner and kind of his experiences in Cleveland sports, from the Cleveland Pipers to nearly buying the Indians in the early 70s with the help of Al Rosen and
close.
Gabe Paul. That'd be one that I would think, because Steinbrenner became for a time the most hated man in professional sports.
Yeah.
The fact that he was so involved in, as a shipbuilder from Lorraine, and becoming this New York sensation. I think a lot of people, when they look at George Steinbrenner, and Nate, when you said, you look about things that have happened to you, I think a lot of people from today's generation don't understand just how troubling the legacy of George Steinbrenner was. They see what happened in the early 2000s and the late 90s with the Yankees, and they think he was a great owner. And there's this whole other saga before that,
Right.
That defined his legacy. That, frankly, he may not have survived if he were in Cleveland. But you could survive it in New York.
One of the things I don't know if you guys read, ladies and gentlemen, The Bronx is Burning. It's a look at New York City in 1977. ESPN did a mini series based on the portion that talked about the Yankees, the Bronx Zoo Yankees, and they touched on the mayoral race, and they touched on Son of Sam, but that came out at just the right time in my estimation, because God help me, there were people who said George Steinbrenner should be in the Hall of Fame. And this came out so we could all remember what an absolute raving psycho he used to be. I mean, the guy got suspended from Major League Baseball once, and he got a lifetime ban another time that ended up getting rescinded.
Well, and it also led to one of the great quotes in history, from the late Billy Martin, when he was
One's
talking
a born
about
liar and the other one's
convicted.
Another one that during my lifetime, there's been a few of them. The Fausto Carmona one, just,
oh my God.
Kellen Winslow wrecking his
the thing.
motorcycle.
Vince wouldn't put this in his book, But with Fausto Carmona at the 2007 state track meet, Vince and I were both down there covering it for our respective papers. And Vince looks at me and he says, "I'm going to name my first child Fausto." As it turned out, and it's a good thing he didn't name Sammy after that, because now he wouldn't be named for anyone. The child wouldn't be named Sammy. She wouldn't be named for anyone at this point. You'd have to change the name to Roberto Hernandez.
Well,
That's
of course,
good.
by the time my daughter was born, if I were going to name her Fausto, that means I would have to absolutely beat her every 5 days.
Ooh. All right. Another one that stood, I mean, J.R. Smith, forgetting what the score was. I mean, that's a recent one for me, but I think one that for me was one that stood out as a Browns fan was it's one of the biggest what ifs to me. LaCharles Bentley going down with that freak injury in the first play of training camp. I feel like that was one of those biggest, like, what if moments as a Browns fan when I look back, because they spent so much money that offseason, and he was the prize acquisition, and they thought that this guy, multiple time Pro Bowler, this guy, he was going to be the key. And he was
coming home.
Yeah, he was coming home. He was an Ohio guy. He was a Cleveland kid. He was coming home, and first play of training camp goes out with a knee injury, never plays again. That's just one of those things where it's like, wow, only in Cleveland.
Well, and not just that. I mean, he only blew out one patellar tendon.
Yeah.
Later on that season, Gary Baxter blew out both of them.
Yeah.
The thing about, and the funny thing about, the only thing about LaCharles, though, is that you remember they went out and got Hank Fraley after that. They got him for a song, I believe, from Philadelphia, and he actually played reasonably well.
Yeah.
And so they actually, I don't want to say they dodged a bullet with that one, but yeah, for him, it's certainly a what if, because he never played again. He ended up having LaCharles Bentley never played again. He ended up hosting a radio show in Cleveland for a number of years.
Yep.
And I think, obviously he's best known, aside from that injury, he's best known for being part of Ohio State, during some of their good teams in the 90s.
For sure. Mm-hmm. All right. So guys, I don't want to keep you too long here. I have my guest here waiting. I do want to kind of give you a moment, Vince, to get shout outs, any thank yous you want to give out there, because it's a pretty big moment. I think this is a big book, and people really need to go out there, and it's available at any of the publications where you can find books normally, correct?
Yeah. It's on Amazon. It's Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. You can order it directly from the publisher if you want to as well. Grayco.com. But this has been it has been occasionally traumatic, but mostly it has been a labor of love.
Yeah, I can only imagine. This one's probably pretty fun to write and just kind of go through the different moments in time with Cleveland sports. Obviously, we all have a love-hate relationship with Cleveland sports sometimes, but it's mostly just a love relationship. We love watching it. We're dedicated to it. So for you to be able to put something like this together, and this is great reading material, not just bathroom reading material, but great reading material in general. And I think this is something that every Cleveland sports fan should try to get their hands on. So once again, Weird Moments in Cleveland Sports. Vince Guerrieri. Did I get that right?
You did.
All right. Thank you for coming on with us. Thanks to Zach Baker, sports editor at the Findlay Courier as well. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right. And we're going to take a moment, take a quick time out. We'll come back. We got a special guest joining us in studio. Tune in. Stay tuned to find out who. We'll come back to you after this right here on Heart of Ohio Sports. All right, and we're back in studio. Nate Mullins, Greg Kinn on the ones and twos, the Wizard, and of course, we have a special guest joining us in studio today. The man, the myth, the legend, BRODY CONLEY, two-time state champ, current West Virginia Mountaineer. How we doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Hey, appreciate you spending some time with us tonight.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime.
So you're in town, you got a little bit of a break, you know. How was that first semester?
It wasn't too bad. Stayed on track with my grades. Athletics was good. Wrestling was good. I got some really good bonds with my teammates, my coaches. I've enjoyed it a lot.
That's cool. Heck yeah, man. So you originally, we've been following you since you were a freshman in high school. Now, when we first heard of your, recruiting process, you had originally committed to Cornell.
Yeah.
You decided to switch your commitment over to West Virginia. Now, what inspired that switch?
There was a lot of guys that I was committed to Cornell for, but they ended up leaving, and there wasn't a whole lot of communication as to why and what was going on. And then, so two of the guys on the team left, and then the head coach actually left. So that was just like, oh, wow. Kind of like makes you question yourself and your choices that you made. So I kind of settled out for a while. And the new head coach that came in was awesome. After I decommitted, I kept talking to Cornell, actually. They were still on me, trying to recruit me. But they were cool. But then, then Coach Flynn and all the West Virginia staff started talking to me a lot, and I got along pretty well with them. So.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So now, this has probably been a big adjustment for you going from high school to college. What do you think? What's the biggest adjustment that you've had to deal with so far?
There's probably two. So I've been a big family person all my life. It's always been me, my sisters, and my parents. I've had good friends, but not really. Never really been able to like join all my friends and all the fun stuff that a lot of high schoolers do. I've always kind of held myself back a little bit just because I knew I had a huge future in front of me.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff that high schoolers do that are just like dumb, stupid, whatever. So I couldn't get myself in the situation. So I'd say my family, because they've always been there for me. They were super supportive, and they always wanted what was best for me. And then also, like, just adjusting to college, like the wrestling aspect. Like,
right.
I knew school was going to be okay, but in the wrestling aspect, everything's just heightened times 10. The speed, the strength, the knowledge of the sport. And I just knew I was going to be competing with some of the best guys in the whole world.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Yeah.
So, your fall schedule obviously is a little bit different. How did you prepare for wrestling this season, and when did training for you really begin?
So, right when school got over with in May, I was training here a little bit, but I actually left on June 31st to go to college to get there. So I've been there since July 1st.
Start.
Yeah. So I've been there since July 1st, and right when I got there, I started training. I started like a summer class just to get me ready for like the actual college life of school and stuff. But it was like lifting 4 days a week, practicing 4 days a week, and then just roll straight into season. So I've been at it for like 7 months now, 6-7 months, whatever it is.
So, all right, now my next question. Football was a large part of your life growing up. Now, you're a former Eagle from Tiffin Youth Football. You spent a lot of time on the gridiron over the last couple, obviously about the last decade or so, right?
Yeah.
How bad did you miss it this year, man?
Yeah, it gives me chills.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just,
I see it in you, man. When we covered you for the last 4 years, like you're a dog. Like everything about your game is like, it's hard not to like what you do on the football field. Just the way you present yourself, the way you carry yourself, and just the way you get after it, man. It's just it's fun to watch.
Yeah,
and so that's why I was like, man, this has got to be something like it burns inside of you. Mm-hmm. That's why I had to ask, like, how bad did you miss it this year?
Yeah, football was originally like my sport. Like,
yeah.
I started wrestling at a young age, but like I always told myself when I played for like the Eagles and like when I was younger, I was like, man, I'm gonna play football for Ohio State one day. I'm gonna be at the top program, but my height didn't really get me there. Yeah. But it was hard. Because I had all my friends, they were playing still, and made me miss it because I knew playing with them and just playing with them over the couple of years I did was so much fun. There was nothing like it. Like,
well, be honest with yourself. You could have played football if you wanted to. You could have went somewhere D3, D2, even D1. You could have went to Bowling Green or something, like somewhere local. You could have went, but you had your sights set on something bigger. Since you started wrestling, man, you've known that while football's a passion, wrestling's a gift for you, man.
Yeah.
It really is, you know?
Yeah, you're right. That's and that really hit me like when I was in middle school. It was like, it's like, dang, like I'm not gonna fill all the requirements for football as much as I would like to, but I realized like something clicked when wrestling came around. Like it was just like, dang, like every day I loved it. Like going into practice, just competitions, like just itched at me. There was always something like, yeah, this is my thing.
That's awesome, man.
But
so talk about, I just want to, I coached the Eagles for 4 years. I spent a little time with youth football. I want to know what one of your favorite memories from youth football was. Obviously, it's been a long time, but you know, go back to those days as an Eagle. What was one of your favorite memories?
You know, we probably my fifth. I was in 5th grade or 6th grade one of the years, but we would just run it up on every single team. Like, and my dad was just like not let go. He's just like, nah, because everyone in the little league always chirps and chirps and chirps and they cheat.
Oh yeah.
Oh my, we'd run up scores like 60 something to nothing.
Shoo.
Like it was like, I'm not even joking. It was like we would play Hopewell and we beat them like 72 to like 6. Like, yeah, my dad, we were relentless. Like my dad's mentality kind of like shaped me.
Yeah.
My dad's a lot like me. Like he set me up to become who I am. And yeah, he put that little gritty edge on my shoulder.
Yeah,
he put that into me.
He's got that beast mentality, man. It permeates to the people around him.
For sure.
That's why he's such a great addition to that coaching staff over at Tiffin Columbian. Like, he went to coach at Tiffin Columbian because of you, obviously. But since you've left, he stick around, man. He loves his job. He loves what he does. He's got a passion for the game that it's obvious.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, I wanted to have him on tonight. I was looking forward to it. I was hoping for it, but you know what? Things happen.
Yeah.
But I tell him I appreciate him setting this up for me.
Yeah, for sure.
And I really appreciate you coming on. But let's talk. We talked about youth football. Now let's talk about wrestling. Obviously you have a love for this sport, but what really has made you like get involved with it as much as you have? Like, from the beginning, you knew this was the sport you have to commit to, or when did it, you said middle school is when it clicked for you.
Yeah.
Now, you know, when did you know that, all right, I got to focus on wrestling? And did you start going to like camps or like doing any kind of special like training with individuals or any kind of...
So I wrestled for a club growing up. I always just stayed local up until like fifth grade. And then we had a bunch of friends that told us about like this club called BTW, where it's like in Mullin and Elyria and Perrysburg, and they super great coaches. They really brought my wrestling to a whole new level. And they just they made everything like kind of fit into place. They expanded my knowledge of wrestling, and they showed, like, they would have guys from all over the country come in, like the top athletes, top wrestlers, like whoever wrestled, like Logan Stieber. He was a 4-time national champ, 4-time Ohio High School state champ. He would come in and run practices.
That's
his
crazy.
brother, who was crazy, insane too. But yeah, actually, it's kind of crazy. So in 7th grade, it was like a tough time because I was kind of getting that sense of like the whole friend thing. Like, I didn't have a whole lot of friends because I had my mindset.
Right.
So it was like a tough time for me. I actually like wanted to like quit sports and like quit everything in 7th grade. And then my parents were just like, hey, buddy, like, you worked too hard for this.
Yep.
You did a lot of stuff to get yourself in this position. And I was like, yeah. So then that summer I really bought into it. And then that's when I went into 8th grade, that's when I just turned up and I was like, yeah, I love this. I won a state championship in my middle school state championship. And then I knew then, I was like, oh yeah, this is my thing. But then my freshman year, I went down to state, got 4th or whatever. But during that year, I learned like a lot about myself. I put in a lot of work with my coaches, and I beat some really good kids, like some of the top kids in the country that they were seniors. They were 19 years old, me wrestling when I was 15.
Oh, I know.
They were just old kids, and it was just like...
There was a lot of chatter about what you were doing back then.
Yeah,
man.
it was just like, dang, like...
You perked up a lot of ears back then. Let me just say that.
Yeah, it's cool. It just feels good. And then... But yeah, that's just when I kind of realized, I was like, yeah, I could be really good at this. Like I could take this to a different level.
Now talk about, we say 2-time, but honestly, I feel like you were robbed of that 3-time state championship title because of that 2020 season. Talk about that for you, just what that, I mean, obviously that was painful for you. Because,
Yeah.
you know, as a sophomore, everybody knew you were rising and you were set to basically ascend to that top spot.
Yeah, I was digging deep. I was that year was kind of like set me apart, and it made me. I developed a mindset that year where like I was like, you call me the buzzsaw and everything. It's kind of what my mindset was. I was like, I'm a buzzsaw. Like nobody can mess with me. Like I'll go out there, I'll scrap. You may beat me, but I'm gonna give you every single last bit of effort I have just to make sure like you're in pain going off the mat. You question yourself like, oh man, this kid's catching up. You know what I mean? But yeah, it was. I remember it like it was. I'll always remember it. I was sitting in history class, and Mr. Heberling, Coach Heberling.
Yeah.
I was sitting in his class, and I was sitting there, and I was looking at my phone because it was the day before the actual tournament started. We were supposed to leave that night, and I got a text from my buddy Max Ray, when he was at B-Town.
Okay. Yeah. Yo, you caught yourself. You caught yourself.
And he was like, "Hey man, like look at this. Like it's a news reporting place saying that the tournament's postponed indefinitely." And I was like, "What?" It's like, no way.
That had to have been a gut punch, man.
Yeah, and I was just like, I'm like, nah, someone's messing with me. Like, this is a meme or something. Like, but it was just like, dang. But, you know, like, God has a plan for everything. And that definitely factored into the next couple of years. Like,
that's a great mentality to have.
Man. Yeah, he puts everything in line for you to be successful, to learn and learn lessons. And that made me hungry for the next year, my junior year, and every tournament from there. So I just learned to kind of accept it and not be too hard on myself or anybody else about it, because you can only control what you can control. Like that's an incontrollable that you can't do anything about.
That's right.
So yeah, I just kind of responded and stayed focused. So
I like it.
yeah,
I like it.
yeah, for sure.
So tell me about West Virginia. What sold you on West Virginia? Obviously coaches and the guys that, you know, obviously in the locker room, but what about the campus, man?
It's beautiful. It's I like going outside and stuff. Like I like going hiking. I like going whitewater rafting, like kayaking. That's all the stuff you can do down there. Like there's this thing called Cooper's Rock. It's beautiful down there. There's you go 20 minutes away to see over the most gorgeous like canyon type valley thing that you've ever seen. And we went whitewater rafting the first 2 weeks I was there with our strength and conditioning coach and the whole team.
That's so cool.
Just like the guys on my team are awesome. And I actually started rock climbing. We got a rock wall gym, like a rock climbing gym in Morgantown, and my strength and conditioning coach is huge into it. So I'd go there like 2 times a week, and then I'll go out in the like actual wild, like the woods and stuff, and go climbing up the rocks like without anything on me. So it's like risky, but
solo climbing.
Oh my gosh, but I love it. Like you get to the top, and it's just like you just feel like connected, and it's beautiful. But
oh man, that's so cool.
Yeah, but the campus is awesome. You meet.
That's a great way to build hand strength, arm strength.
Good on your shoulders.
Yeah, for
grip.
sure.
But yeah, and then like the campus, it's beautiful. You walk wherever you want. It's a pretty safe place, and there's a lot of people you meet. I think that's one of the coolest things. Like there was kids that would be walking around my dorm, and they'd come up to me. They're like, "Hey, you're Brody Conley," and I'm like, "How do you know who I am?" And they're like, "You wrestled my buddy in high school. Like I'm from Ohio, or like I saw you in a tournament at like a tournament in Ohio," and I'm like, "No way! Like that's
awesome.
crazy. A small world." Or like people be like related to my cousins or something, or know my cousins, and I'm like, "What? That's insane." But yeah, it's sweet. I think it's just a new opportunity to like just have fun and experience new things, and that's what I love
expand yourself
about it.
as a person.
Yeah.
I like that. I like the fact that, you know, people might not know that about you, that you're, you know, into, I guess, you know, thrilling things. You know, like you like to go white. I like the water rafting thing, man. Like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was super sketchy because like so we found out we went and like a week later, someone was going down the same thing and got trapped under a rock and like died. Like so like I get like rushed, like I get thrills, like it's kind of messed up, but like I get like thrills about stuff like that because I'm like, oh, like I don't know, I like that
I was just there.
Yeah, like the rock claw or the rock climbing stuff. Like I'm on the top of this rock, like 40 feet up in the air. how am I gonna get back down? I'm just up there. I'm like, oh man, that was easy getting up.
I didn't plan out my exit strategy here.
But I love that stuff. Like it just gets my heart racing and it gets me
That's cool.
excited. But yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
All right, so you got your next semester coming up. When do you go back?
I actually go back to 26th.
26th?
Yeah,
so
I got
the
home
day
yesterday.
after Christmas, you go right back?
Yeah, yeah.
So you get a little bit of time, spend time with the family, and I
Yeah.
really appreciate you carving out a nice little chunk
Oh,
of it
for
for
sure.
us tonight,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
And I saw the picture you at wrestling practice tonight, man. Big ups for that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
My son's 8th grader, Isaac.
Yeah.
He looks up to you like tremendously.
Really?
So it meant a lot to him. I told him, I was like, Brody might be there tonight. I heard a little secret, maybe.
Yeah.
He's like, really?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just I really appreciate you kind of spending time with not just us, but the community as well.
Yeah, for sure. It just I knew how important to me how important that was to me when I was a little kid. Like when I was in that same situation, there was Seth Williams. Seth was like my idol growing up. Like I looked up to that dude. Because my dad coached before with like Chad Long and all them, and
Yeah.
Seth was like Mason Crow, and a couple other guys. Like I was like, dang, like I can't wait to be like them one day. Blah 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 blah. So I think about that stuff. I'm like, these kids like they love that. Like they want to see these older people that they know, that the people know, like the community knows. And I don't know. I think you should always give back, and that's just really important to me.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's a great attitude, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, hey, I really appreciate you spending time with us tonight. Once again, I don't want to take up too much of your time. You're here to spend time with family.
Yeah.
Once again, thank you.
Yeah.
Any
sure.
shout outs you want to give? Any
Shout out to the people of Tiffin. They just showed all the support in the world. Shout out to my family. Love you all, and I'm thankful for all of you.
Now, we were originally having you on because tomorrow was supposed to be BRODY CONLEY night at the Tiffin Columbian game we were going to be at. And so we were going to have a little interview with you beforehand and maybe even catch up with you during the game or something. But, they canceled the game now. So, folks, we'll have to see if we can catch up with you down the road, though.
Yeah, things happen.
Absolutely.
It's all good. God bless.
Appreciate your time, man.
For sure.
Thank you. Once again, thanks for tuning in here on Mullin It Over on Heart of Ohio Sports. 2-time state champion BRODY CONLEY, current West Virginia Mountaineer, coming on the program with us. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you share the video, like, follow, subscribe on all of our platforms. Once again, thanks to Vince Guerrieri and Zach Baker for coming on in the first segment. And thanks, of course, as always, to the Wizard, Greg Kinn, for keeping us online, live, and locked in. All right, folks, that's going to do it. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you next time.